The following program is underwritten by the generous support of Associates of Glens Falls and Loomis and Lipan Insurance. Since 1852, they have been assisting both businesses and individuals across the country secure the most comprehensive insurance products available. Associates of Glens Falls and Loomis and Lipan are one of New York's largest independently owned insurance agencies. Public affairs programming on Look TV is underwritten by the generous support of Pinnell's Restaurant, classic Italian-American food since 1922, and Stored Tech, technology solutions for computers, networks, and phone. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.
1922, Babe Ruth debuts with the Yankees. WGY signs on air. Exterminator wins the Saratoga Cup, and Pinnell's Restaurant opens its doors for the very first time. For 5 generations, Pinnell's has been preparing delicious Italian food, served in a comfortable, home-like setting where everyone is welcome. 90 years of authentic Italian recipes, 90 years of the freshest ingredients, and 90 years of the finest classic Italian dishes, all made daily by hand. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga dining tradition since 1922.
Most cybersecurity firms deal only with prevention, the systems that block hackers and viruses. Stored Tech knows the root cause is actually good people doing bad things. So we offer a security training program which includes certifying all participants to show they understand the basics.
Technology solutions for computers, networks, and phones. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.
At this time, I would ask Supervisor Siegel to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to
the United States of
America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that went well. I'll ask the clerk to conduct a roll call, please.
Mr. Conover?
He's muted.
Here.
Here. Mr. Leggett?
Here.
Mr. Diamond?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt? Mr. McDevitt? Ms. Bramer?
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Bruno?
Here.
Mr. Driscoll?
Here.
Mrs. Frazier? Here. Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Ms. Hogan?
Here.
Mr. Dickinson?
Present.
Mr. Molina?
Here.
Mr. Stroud?
Here.
Mr. Wild?
I'm here.
Mr. McGowan?
Here.
Ms. Seaver?
Here.
Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Ms. Shepler? Here. Mr. Garrity? Chairman Thomas?
Here. Okay, the next item is a motion to approve the minutes of the March 20th, 2020 board meeting, subject to correction by the clerk. Moved by Supervisor Shepard, seconded by Supervisor Merlino. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, Gary. Do we have Dr. Seeley with us? Postponed to. Okay. I'm under the impression that Congresswoman Stefanik would like to call us. You want to do that now, or?
What number? Can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to speak with the Warren County Board of Supervisors as well as the county officials. First, thank you, everyone, for all of your great work during this crisis. We know it's been absolutely unprecedented, and our counties have truly risen to the occasion. I wanted to provide a few updates as we are negotiating the federal packages. Number one, as you are aware, the Small Business Administration Paycheck Protection Program has run out of funds, and we are trying to pass a clean increase of funding right now. And In addition, we are also negotiating a package to provide support for our county governments and local governments, as well as our hospitals and community health centers. The Department of Health and Human Services has sent out the first 30% of the $70 billion of funding, and our hospitals have received that first 30%, including Glens Falls Hospital. The issue and the concern from the New York delegation is that was based upon 2019 data points, which is not reflective of where we are today. So just to kind of translate that, it basically treats all hospitals the same across the country based upon 2019. The New York delegation wants to ensure that the funds to our hospitals and community health centers is based upon the data today, i.e. if you are a state or a region that has been hit hard by the coronavirus epicenter, you should be reimbursed at a different level than states and hospitals that have not been hit hard. So we're working with the Hospital Association of New York and all of our local hospitals on that issue. I had an opportunity to participate in the daily briefing with some of the hospitals in my district, Glens Falls, who of course is part of the Albany Med organized call, as well as Nathan Littauer, which serves the Fulton County region of my district. Day to day, we are in touch with each of the hospitals on a daily basis to make sure that we're hearing their concerns and meeting their needs. In addition, this morning I participated in an update call with all of our wishy-bocy superintendents. We are working to make sure that the Department of Education federal funds starts flowing to our school districts. I believe that's very important considering they've had to turn on a dime and they've done a tremendous job shifting to online learning. Their teachers have been tremendous, the administrators, the superintendents, the school deliveries. So at the federal level, when it comes to education funding, we want that as flexible as possible to help our school districts get through this. I also had a conversation yesterday with Dr. Chris Duffy regarding SUNY Adirondack. The federal dollars for our higher ed institutions, those are also starting to flow. The first 50% has been allocated. That's the direct aid to the students. And the additional 50%, from my perspective, we want that to be as flexible as possible, since, again, our higher ed institutions are having to grapple with this very unprecedented set of challenges that they face. It was a good discussion with Dr. Duffy. I am raising her concerns as we continue to set the guidelines at the federal level as to how those funds can be spent. And then, of course, I know what's critically important to the counties is making sure that in our next stimulus package, we have direct funds to local governments, regardless of size. I think that is critically important because the counties in my district have really borne the brunt of this crisis. The county departments of public health have been tremendous in rising to the occasion, but I know that fiscally you are in really dire circumstances. So at the federal level, we want, and I support, and I'm on some of the members of the New York delegation are pushing for that direct funding to the counties, and I fully support that. I also think that our state governors should be required to certify that funds will be given directly to counties and not, as you know, not dealt with at the state level. We really think that it should be prioritized at the county level. With that, I will turn it over. I would love to answer any questions, Chairman, if anyone has them.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us again today. I really do appreciate the updates coming straight from you. And I have a question for you about the other monies that are going to SUNY Adirondack. Will they be able to use that money for broadband expansion services, do you know?
We want the money to be as flexible as possible. So in my conversation with Dr. Duffy, I think they should be able to allocate that money to the general fund, which gives them the flexibility to use it for what they need. You know, each higher ed institution is in a very different set of circumstances. SUNY Adirondack, we did talk about how this has definitely highlighted the digital divide. They are in a different situation than a SUNY Plattsburgh or a Clarkson, for example, just in terms of the demographics and the rural nature of the students they serve. So yes, I would support that funding being able to be used for this pivot to online learning and the technological needs. More broadly, though, Claudia, this is highlighting the absolute necessity of a rural broadband strategy across the country, because even in my BOCES call this morning, our students, for example, in the North Warren School District or in the Warrensburg School District, it has been a challenge with some of the students who just don't have access and they can't even set up hotspots. The FCC has taken steps at the federal level to increase investment in rural communities. And prior to this crisis, Chairman Pai, who's the chair of the FCC, and I had a call about making sure New York is eligible for some of the rural broadband funds that we were initially going to be blocked out of because of some of the decisions at the state level. They did make an update to that to ensure that New York is eligible. And I'm hoping once we get through this crisis that I will be able to have the chairman of the FCC come to the district, hear from the stakeholders so they know how critical the funding is. So yes, we want our higher ed institutions to be able to use the money for what we think they need, but it's broader than that, as you know.
Yeah, definitely. We have been working, I am working with the county planning department. We went around and tried to collect information about places in the public that would open up Wi-Fi hotspots. And we put that on a map on our county resources, COVID resources page. And it's really great to see that. So I would encourage you to take a look at that or point your constituents there. And I do want to thank our DPW superintendent, Kevin Hajos, for actually expanding one of the county's Wi-Fi spots. I asked him to do that and he did it within a few days. So we have some spots in Warrensburg that people can go to. It's not the best, but at least it's a little something to help our younger students and older students. But thank you. I appreciate you really acknowledging that problem and looking to help create the longer term solutions. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes,
Bruno.
Supervisor Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you also, Congresswoman Stefanik, for attending. My understanding, for us to get back to any sort of normalcy and open up a lot of businesses, et cetera, we're going to need faster, widespread testing. Do you know what the status of that is?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I think as we look both short-term and long-term, that's going to be critically important. The FDA has expedited their approval process of this fast turnaround testing capability. One of my concerns is as the state has allocated our testing capabilities, you are more likely to have been tested if you live downstate than you are if you live upstate. So I'll give an example. Essex County, which I just have the data in front of me, 0.45% of the Essex County population has been tested, and the average percentage, if you look across New York statewide, is 2.5%. So it's low anyway statewide, but it's much lower in our upstate North Country counties. The FDA, again, is approving faster turnaround testing capabilities, and it's clear that we need to work with the governors to get those testing capabilities in their hands. But from my perspective, we've got to make sure that as New York is allocating those testing capabilities, that they are indeed prioritizing upstate New York, even though we have more rural populations.
Very good. Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Anyone else? I don't see any. I want to thank you, Congresswoman Stefanik, for calling in this morning and giving us an update. It's very much appreciated, and your hard work is appreciated. And, if there's nothing else, have a good day.
Great. I just remembered one more item, and this is particularly for some of our seasonal supervisors. I'm thinking of Ron and some of the others. I know there have been questions from our seasonal businesses about the eligibility for the SBA programs. We are working at making sure that the Department of Treasury guidance is much more flexible and understanding of the seasonal nature of businesses. So we're trying to extend that deadline that was set for June 30th in terms of looking at payroll to actually reflect the high season. So as you get questions from your, hotels, restaurants, all the seasonal businesses that are so critical to our economy, please don't hesitate to reach out to my office because we're working through and triaging those questions.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all the great work at Warren County. Appreciate it.
Elise.
Have a good day.
Bye. You too.
Okay, the next item is a report by the chairman. This past month has been one to remember. It's been very busy, very stressful at times. I want to thank our county administrator and our county attorney, and I know I'm going to leave somebody out, but the sheriff's department, public health, especially the nurses, OES, the clerk of the board, and thank all the county employees that have helped here. We've been reacting to the governor's executive orders. It's not always clear exactly what they mean. But I think we've done a good job and sought clarity where we needed to, and all the staff has participated very well and stepped up and taken care of what we could take care of. I have renewed the emergency declaration for another 30 days, as you might have saw in the paper. I've also renewed the 2 executive orders that I've issued. One is restricting access to the buildings, and the second is for to help with the public health department as for mandatory quarantines. We've worked hard to be in compliance with the executive orders. We do still have a little appeal going on with the RV campsites. The directive from the state is they are to be closed. We've appealed that we have a lot of seasonal people that live in Florida or down south for the winter and then return here in the spring, and they stay in another campground for the summer, and then they return to the south. So that we've appealed to the state, to the governor's office about that issue. We haven't really gotten an answer, so that's still out there, but hopefully they'll see our reasoning and let us do what we've started doing. I've been on many calls with NYSAC in the evening. Steve Aquario and the NYSAC people did an update every evening for about 2 weeks at 7 p.m. Then they went to like 2 a week and 1 a week, and I've learned a lot of information by participating there. It's led to some lobbying with the state when the budget was being finalized, and also with the federal government for FMAP, and also for funds for local government. I've also been on many calls with the state, with the governor's office, which is usually in the afternoon. I have directed and our people, the IT department and Sarah Frankenfeld with planning and tourism have updated, repaired our website to make it at least presentable, and you can actually find some information about COVID-19 and information for businesses, etc. They've done a great job, and it's much better than it was before. Much. On the 26th of March, I participated on a teleconference with President Duffy concerning the SUNY budget. On On the 24th, I participated as sole member of the LDC and appointed the board of directors, and they had their annual organizational meeting. On the 31st, I participated with a female webinar for this disaster relief, 4480 applicant briefing. There's been many issues. One of them was the issue with ventilators. When the governor had proposed to take 20% of the ventilators from everywhere upstate when they needed them in the city. That seemed to explode into a major issue for a couple of days. Thankfully, the need lessened, and that issue went away or calmed down anyways. Done a couple of news interviews. I've done a video, and I've put out quotes for I think about 3 press releases. We've met many times with the task force for various issues, testing, supplies, whatever the issue is at the time. On April 9th, the county did partner with Glens Falls Hospital to perform testing in the back of the municipal building. It operates from 9 to 1 p.m. Currently, I think we've done about 128 tests as of this morning. The first 3 days were, I would say, challenging to say the least. It was either raining or the wind was, blowing 40, 50 miles an hour. But they did persevere, and with the help of the public health department, they've carried through. The latest executive order is to do with the masks, and I see several people have them on right now. That becomes effective tonight at 8 p.m. If you're out in public and cannot maintain social distancing, you're required to have a mask on. There was another issue with the second homes and short-term rentals. One of the governor's executive orders took away our ability to issue emergency orders without approval from the Department of Health. So I would say about 3 weeks ago, we actually requested to be able to shut down short-term rentals, and the Department of Health come back to us and said that that would not be allowed. So the next best step was with the second homes. Obviously, if someone has a second home up here, you can't very well tell them not to come up here. But the next thing that we attempted to do was to request that if they did decide to come up here and not stay home as requested, that they would quarantine themselves for 14 days and contact our public health department. And the short-term rentals, I know there was a extensive effort to just get them not to rent, to stop renting. So it's a request, and I think that at this point that's all we can do. I've been in contact with Glens Falls Hospital a couple of times with Paul Sickma in the command center, asking if they needed any help or if there's anything we could do for them. The economic group that Supervisor Wild is coordinated and put together. It's met once, and we met a couple of times before that discussing it. That's going very well. It's going to be challenging, but there's a lot, there's ideas and hopefully ways to get our economy go back in some kind of shape here. Other than that, it's been, I guess, business as usual. If there's one other thing I would like to mention is the census. We seem to be, some of us anyways, and the county as a whole seems to be lagging in our response So I would encourage everyone to encourage their constituents to respond to the census. It's very important for future funding, future programs. I do believe that planning has put together some yard signs. So I'm not sure how they're going to distribute them, but if everyone could get a few of those and put them around their town, that would be great. But it's very important that our people respond to the census. And with that, that's my report. So the next item is a report by committee chairman on past month's meetings. There hasn't been a lot of meetings, but there has been a few. Supervisor Siebert, anything?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I wanted to just highlight in your packets today, there are a couple proclamations that relate to criminal justice. Proclamation number 2 for Child Abuse Awareness Month and number 3 for Law Day. However, last month you did have a resolution that was approved for National Crime Victims' Rights Week. I just want to remind all of you that while we won't have an opportunity to meet in person and recognize those who work so hard on behalf of our crime victims and our justice system in Warren County, that week is still nationally recognized from April 19th to the 25th. This year's theme is Seek Justice, Ensure Victim Rights, and Inspire Hope. As just a statistical reminder, someone becomes a victim of violent crime every 26 seconds in the United States. And now, of course, we're seeing more and more crime as it relates to technology and also our older Americans in the United States, which you have a proclamation number 5 for in your packets today. I did have an opportunity in 2 committees that I sit on for the National Association of Counties to participate in their phone calls. I want to thank our DA, our public defender, our sheriff, and our probation director on April 1st. They called in on a national public safety and criminal justice call. We had a lot of great information within that call, and again, just reinforced that not only in the criminal justice arena are we where we need to be for Warren County, but we're ahead of that curve. On Monday at committee on the 20th, we'll be zooming out and putting on YouTube Live as well. The DA and probation director will be talking about the impact of the new state budget as it relates to bail reform and criminal justice reform. We like to try to give an update at these monthly meetings on what's going on as it relates to bail, the bail repeal, and there have been some significant changes. Still a lot more work to go, but they're going to be reporting on what's happening from a criminal justice reform perspective. But currently our count in the Warren County Jail, and again, we try to give you this monthly now, is right around 55, 56 inmates. So we're a little bit lower, but right around, where we've been reporting since the start of this in January as it relates to the bail repeal. We also had in NACO that National Association of Counties webinar for resilient counties, as I am a member of the advisory group there. We received great information again in that call and was able to forward it on to our planning department, tourism, and our PR department to really work on those GIS maps and some resources that we've been able to develop into the website. So I know we haven't had a chance, both Supervisor Beatty and myself, to give you an update from our DC conference, but already we're seeing an impact and information we're able to share, with all of you and have that real immediate impact during a crisis in that resilient counties committee. So we meet bi-monthly on that. And I think that covers the items that I wanted to hit on under criminal justice this morning in the NACO committees. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Facilities did not meet, but I did, as a committee, I did meet with Kevin Hajos and Don DeGraw to cover next week's agenda and to curb any unnecessary items out of there that may lead to additional spending in these trying financial times. I did want to make a couple comments. Our county attorney, Mary Cassane, sent out an email probably about 2-3 weeks ago concerning the Macri lawsuit. This was the land that our county took through eminent domain concerning the runway extension. I don't want us to forget that we made, as a board, many missteps along this process. And unfortunately, it's continuing to cost county taxpayers. The lawsuit, Macri won an additional $203,000 that the county's going to have to pay, making the total payment over $500,000 for less than an acre of land. Obviously, the FAA decided that the runway boondoggle was not needed and was obviously it was canceled. But I want to make a point to talk about this because of the fact that we can't continually make poor decisions that cost our taxpayers dollars, especially going forward. We're going to be probably 8, 9, 10 million short in our budget this year because of I'm very concerned that decisions that we make continually affect how our financial situation is going to pan out. Not to belabor it, but the fact that only 2 supervisors joined me in opposing this runway extension. Supervisor Claudia Bramer was instrumental from an environmental standpoint. Supervisor Sieber, although who supported it early on, when she got all the facts, was dead set against the runway extension. I just hope going forward that supervisors take the time to actually learn and get all the information needed on key issues instead of just blindly going over a cliff and following the lead, because this is just another example of costing our taxpayers hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that never should have happened. So that's what all I had to say on that. But that was from Ms. Gassane about 2 weeks ago. And I look forward to next week's facilities meeting. And those agendas, I think, were sent out already. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Shepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not have a report for the committee at this point in time, but now they would like to.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Supervisor Gary. No report. No report. Supervisor Conover.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On April 2nd, the DPW committee met. There's 2 items in front of the board today. Item 154, which deals with repairs to the railroad corridor. I think everyone's familiar with that initiative. That's the result of significant washouts during the storm. And Resolution 155, and 155 is an event that's not going to take place. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that be deleted from the agenda. That would be Resolution 155.
Okay, there's a motion by Supervisor Conover to withdraw Resolution 155. This is to do with the allocation of 100 yearling rainbow trout to the Project Healing Waters event organized by Robert MacArthur. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion on the withdrawal? Hearing none, I'll ask everyone to raise their hand, please. In favor. Okay. And anyone opposed? Okay, Resolution 155 is withdrawn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Liggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public safety did not meet, but there are a few things here. One will be to amend Resolution 150 of 2020, making supplemental appropriations. Through discussions, Tammy DiLorenzo has been in touch with me. She has been in touch with Office of Emergency Services, and I would like perhaps somebody to speak to this would be, Ryan, would you want to speak to this, or is Tammy on to talk about, or Amy Drexel is on as well? This is moving appropriations, $25,000 from contingency fund to civil defense medical fees. And this is for the purchase of face masks.
What resolution is that, Craig?
This would be resolution 150.
I've got making supplemental appropriations.
Yes.
This says.
And right now, there's only one item on there, the sheriff's law enforcement.
Correct.
Move of funds.
So you're talking about adding one?
And we would be adding one.
I'm sorry, I didn't pay attention. Thank you.
Okay. So your proposal is to add $25,000 from contingent for masks?
That's correct.
Okay.
Can you make it a separate resolution?
I know we're going to add it to resolution 150.
I'm uncomfortable with that, so I'll vote no on that. I think it should be a separate resolution.
Okay.
I'd like to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Supervisor Dickinson. Discussion. Yes, Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to agree with Supervisor Beatty. I'd like to see that an independent resolution going forward. That's something that we haven't talked about in the Public Safety Committee meeting. I understand the need to buy masks. I support that. But we do have a public safety meeting coming Monday, and the resolution in front of us, 150, without the amendment, did go in front of the Finance Committee. However, I don't. So I have to agree with Supervisor Beatty on this particular action. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I could respond to Supervisor Diamond there. As we're all aware, we're in a very fast-moving situation. And as of tonight, there is going to be amendment to the executive orders of all workers using face masks. So in order to be able to obtain these face masks in an appropriate time and provide protection to our employees, time is of the essence. The committee process we all admire and respect. We also admire and respect the need to act quickly when the need arises.
Mr. Chairman, Brian LaFleur, may I speak?
Yes, please.
Relative to this scenario, we're in an unprecedented time. There are regulations, including my job description and other things that indicate what needs to happen or what can happen in the event of a state of emergency. We're in a state of emergency, federal, state, and locally. Especially the face mask things that we've been pushed against as far as the governor and his executive orders. These masks are so hard to get. I'm talking worldwide, not just here in Warren County or New York State. It's around the world to be able to purchase these. And the price on these masks changes every single day. We started with a mask that was 20 cents. Now it's $1. Tomorrow it'll be $4. And there are things that we have to do during an event like this that we cannot necessarily wait for a committee meeting or another meeting. Our goal with this dollar amount that was discussed was that would be a not to exceed number, but so that we could accomplish the purchase that we need to cover our own employees. We are required as the employer to provide our employees with this stuff. A lot of our employees, a number of them have been working diligently. They're making their own. And that's great. That saves the county money. But there are still people that we have to provide the masks for. And the longer we wait, I'm talking daily,
The longer we wait, the cost will go up, and the procurement date, right now, you can't get masks for less than 2 weeks. Some of them are 4 weeks, some of them are July, some are August. So unfortunately, it's just, it's one of those things that during this type of situation, there are things that we cannot wait for the regular process. It's not that we don't want to do it. It's just that we know what the situation is that we all have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to briefly say that we had a discussion last month about emergency spending authority. And I believe that that was all intended to allow us to move quickly in a situation where it could save lives, save significant money. If there's resistance to this, let's just move it over to the administrator and that team of supervisors and see if they approve it and make the decision today. Thank you.
Supervisor Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, I was speaking with North Warren EMS about their mass situation. And I think that the more time that we wait on this, the more difficult it's going to be to get these masks, and they're going to go up in price. They're paying significantly higher prices right now than we are. And from my point of view, we need to act on this as soon as we can.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. I completely agree with moving quickly, and I want to say what I put in the chat is that make this a separate resolution so that it can go forward cleanly. Thank you.
Supervisor Shepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm totally agreeing with moving this forward as rapidly as possible. The masks are becoming more and more difficult to obtain, and they are going up in price rapidly. The masks are important, and I understand that the county needs to provide them for their employees, and I am therefore employed forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Leggett, Supervisor Leggett.
The idea behind bringing this into Resolution 150, making supplemental appropriations, is because that is the appropriate place for this to be housed. If there is a problem with the county responding by using $25,000, which can be reimbursable, and I'll have Director LaFleur respond to that, correct me if I'm wrong, but we should be able to get some of that money reimbursed through FEMA or other areas. And this is just to make a quick action. And again, it's a housekeeping. I don't know what the difference would be if this was made into a whole other separate resolution. Is that to vote it down, to not agree to buy masks for our employees? I'd like a little more explanation from any resistance to this. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have one more comment. Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not a question of voting down purchasing of masks. The topic, what the problem that I have is amending the existing resolution on combining that purchase of masks with the transfers of monies, within the sheriff's department without independency. I think that both resolutions need to be separated because I'm not going to agree with that particular transfer of Resolution 150. So in order to vote independently, I'd like to see that resolution to purchase the masks separate and independent from the existing resolution that's currently in front of us today, 150.
Yeah, you have to wait for the rules first. We have a motion to wait. We have a motion and a second to waive the rules. And Supervisor Diamond. Okay. Supervisor Molino seconded. Would you like to introduce a separate resolution for the 25,000?
Point of order. Mr. Chairman, point of order. Point of order.
Yep.
Point of order.
Yep.
am I correct that there's a motion already on the floor?
Yeah, I believe there was actually.
Okay, then I believe that the motion that's being made is out of order. And I just would add, and I would just add one other thing. The motion that's in front of us is a budgetary motion. It's a financial motion. It's not permission to purchase the masks. Our administrators and whatever have, within public policy, have more than sufficient authorities to purchase what they need to purchase when they need to purchase it. What's in front of us is to move the monies into those accounts to be able to make the purchase. That's the point. And this is a very common thing. We have this in front of us every month. Sometimes there are any of a number of different financial items on here to transfer dollars to wherever they're needed. And so I would say I really don't understand the point of the request. Are we going to, in the future, separate all of these items going forward into dozens and dozens of resolutions so that each one can be voted on individually? I mean, that's something we can discuss. But at the moment, this is in accordance with what our policies are. And with all due respect, there's a motion on the table, and I would ask that it be called.
Okay, thank you. We do have a motion on the floor to amend Resolution 150 to add 25,000 from contingent for supplies for masks. And we do have a second, and I will call the question, and I will ask the clerk to conduct a roll call vote on that.
We're voting on the motion to amend 150
Here.
In here.
25. Sorry, this is to voting on a motion to amend resolution 150 to include a $25,000 transfer from contingency to the Office of Emergency Services budget. Mrs. Seaver?
Just to be clear then, discussion is over on this, Mr. Chairman. We did the.
Yes, ma'am.
Number one, I want to support. Yep. Yep, I'll vote yes.
Mr. Beatty?
I'm not comfortable with, with us always doing this at the last minute. It should be voted on separately. I think it would be unanimous if we did vote on the mask separately funding. There's no question about it. But to tag it with another item that we've already said needed a roll call vote. So I'm going to vote, and knowing that there's already authority to go ahead and buy these from the task force and the administrator, I'm going to probably vote no on this one.
Ms. Shepler? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
I'm going to vote no on amending the resolution because I do agree the money should be spent for masks. However, I don't agree with the original resolution that's in front of us today. So if I have to vote no, that's the reason why.
Mr. McDevitt? Ms. Bramer?
I want to echo what Supervisor Diamond just said. I think this should be a separate resolution, especially if we think we're going to get reimbursement for it. It should be out there separately so we can ask for that money very clearly to be reimbursed. So I'm no on amending the resolution 150. Thank you.
Mr. Bruno?
I agree. I'd like to see it as a separate resolution, but I also don't want to hold this up. I think it's critical, very important. So somewhat reluctantly, I'll vote yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson? Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Molina?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. The resolution to amend 150 passes by a vote of 763 in favor.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, at this point, with permission, I'd like Director LaFleur to update us on the operations of OES at this time?
Without objection, Mr. LaFleur.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. OES has been running pretty hard, to be very honest with you, since this scenario started. We're glad to be able to provide the facility out in the rear of the municipal center so that the hospital can operate their clinic. We had some issues with wind. As you know, we had one night that the wind was almost 60 miles an hour. Our tent, it didn't leave the grounds, but it did tip over a little. But we're doing very well. And thanks to Superintendent Hayjos, he and his gentleman came and helped, and then provided another 1,000 pounds of sandbags to hold it down. So we're doing well there. It is a lot of work, and down the road, I think we do need to talk about a different scenario depending on how long this is going to last. The tent scenario is not good unless it's done in a very short period of time. When we set that system up out there, we were told it was going to be 5 days. Now I'm being told that it may be out to 4 and 5 weeks. I believe that we need a better solution for that. And I have discussed this with the task force, and we do have some options. And at some point, we need to have a discussion on that. I think that's important. Otherwise, OES, our big thing right now is, per the governor, they tell everyone in the state that needs anything to contact your local emergency manager. That's a great thing. I appreciate the fact that they also gave out my own email address and my cell phone numbers out there. The other side of that coin is I handed that to Deputy Director Drexel, and she has done an excellent job with that. Anything that anybody wants, from the hospital, nursing homes, healthcare facility, all the way down to the squads and the fire departments and the funeral directors, all those requests have to come to our office. We have to make a request to the state, and it goes through an unbelievable amount of foolishness down there, and they have a system for it. It's failed. A lot of things going on. Bottom line is they send us what they want us to take. It's like they don't even see what we ask for, and they send us stuff. Right now, so far, we've gotten about 10% of what we've asked for. And the priority that we were given was anything we do get from the state stockpile. The hospital was first in line, and then the nursing homes and health centers and down the line. That sounds good, but with the amount that we're getting, we generally don't have enough other than for the first two. Now, this last, they call it a push that we've gotten. Amy's been able to do a better job with that as far as getting some stuff to the other agencies, the nursing homes. Like I say, it's been a tough scenario. We're not a warehousing operation. That's not how we're set up. But generally, the deliveries that we get from the state, we get about as much notification as they say we're in the parking lot. And this can be Saturday, Sunday, 3 o'clock in the morning. That has been tough to deal with. The trucks that they send, some of them have a lift gate, some of them don't have any equipment inside to pull the pallets around. You end up doing it all by hand. And again, we don't have a large staff or a warehousing group that's here to do this. So it's not that we're not doing it, we are doing it. And I appreciate all the help that we get from everyone that does pitch in. But I just want to say that good or bad, we've turned into that type of an organization rather than as much the emergency services. I would like, Amy, would you like to comment real quick on the mass scenario and the inventory and all the stuff that you're dealing with? Yes, no?
Sure. I wasn't planning on talking, so I can't tell you how many thousands and thousands of masks that are requested from healthcare agencies on a weekly basis. And in addition to that, it's the essential businesses that we all want to stay open because we want business to keep going. And now we have the schools. And as of this week, we have citizens that are calling me directly. I'm not sure how they're getting my phone number, but but everyone is looking to be in compliance, which is wonderful. I'm so glad that everyone wants to be in compliance and stuff, but there really is not enough to go around. So my biggest thing that I push to everyone is, if you're an essential business, if you're a person or someone who is not in the healthcare industry, to really look towards those homemade masks. If you can sew yourself, to make them. CDC has some templates that people can use. If you don't know how to sew, or you don't sew very well, like someone like me, Brian and I are wearing our bandanas today, or get somebody else who can make those homemade masks for you, and leave the surgical masks and the other masks that are designed for the medical folks for those people. Our squads are in desperate need of surgical masks and 95 masks and stuff. So if we work as a community, all of us together, we'll get through this.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Amy.
you.
I'm sorry, Frank, did I interrupt you?
No, you got more.
Okay, just to touch on that, just to give you an example, the surgical masks, everybody thinks that we're using those for people to protect themselves where they are. I'll give you an instance where it's a real important thing. The rescue squads cannot bring a patient, no matter what their malaise is, they cannot bring them into the emergency room unless they have one of these masks on. It can't be a homemade mask. It has to be a registered surgical mask. There are some places we've had squads go to Albany Med. They won't even let you on the property. You can't even pull in the parking lot unless everybody has the correct mask on. So for us to get those materials to them, that's very important to us, which is another reason why we as a county, if we have to purchase what we need for our own people, and then the stuff that we get from the state, perhaps we will have enough to give to the squad. So I just throw that out there too, as an example to you that it's not as simple as some people might think to just hand out the mask or tell everybody to go make their own. There are situations where we have no choice and we have to have the mask. So I think does anybody have any questions for me? Because I've talked enough. Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think Supervisor Bramer has her hand up.
Yep. Thank you, Chairman. So thank you very much, guys, for all the work that you're doing. I had no idea that you're getting calls from private citizens, Amy. That's crazy. They're looking for thousands, you said, and you might have said it, but how many do you anticipate buying with the 25,000, and how many do we anticipate getting from the state? What are we looking at? Are we going to have enough for a week, couple weeks?
That inventory scenario has been done. Amy and Tammy DiLorenzo have been working very hard on this. You take the number of employees that we have and you minus the number of employees that have homemade ones or have another source for them. And then bottom line is the dollar amount that you're going to use comes to what you just said. How many weeks is it going to last? So when we did our calculations, the goal was how much money are we going to need to pay for the masks for our employees that will last until the next board meeting at a minimum, 4 weeks. It may be 4 weeks before we can have anything arrive to actually get it delivered. It's very, very hard to do right now. And as I said in the beginning, the cost goes up dramatically every day. So in answer to your question, the administrator put together an excellent spreadsheet. You know, when you look at the spreadsheet, who needs them? They were prioritized. You have a high risk, you have a medium risk, you have a low risk. A sheriff's deputy has a high risk. Somebody that works in the office may have a low risk or may not meet the public. So that was done on a spreadsheet, which Mr. Administrator, I believe that was over 460. I forget how many you had on the list. There was quite a few. This kind of scenario, you know, we've worked hard to figure that out and to determine that. So in answer to your question, yes, the dollar amount that we came up with, our initial dollar amount was 48,000. And we obviously felt that that wasn't appropriate. But now that the governor has extended it to May 15th, again, now we say, how much are we going to need? So our goal was with the 25,000 was to purchase what we can right now to get us to say 30 days. And at that point in time, we will have a better handle on exactly how many we're using every week. It's called the burn rate. We have to ask the rescue squads, everybody we deal with, it's the burn rate. And that means how many are you using per week? We ask that of the hospital and the nursing homes and everybody. They determine how much you're going to need by what your burn rate is. The state of New York is using something relative to, if this is your burn rate, we'll give you enough for 2 days. Well, that sounds good if another delivery comes. We're not getting a delivery every 2 days. So it's difficult, to be honest with you. So I know I jumped around there, but in answer to your question, the calculations were done by Amy and Tammy DiLorenzo. That's how we came up with that, with the information that the administrator was able to glean from all the department heads. And again, that's just us. Think about every other business and everything else that's going on in Warren County. They're all trying to do the same thing.
Brian, are we getting some from the state every few days or what? And that's just for us?
No, that what we get has to go to the hospital first. Then it goes to the health centers and nursing homes. And in this last push that we got, we made a very conscious decision that we were going to keep a quantity of those for Warren County, for our employees. We're not doing anything inappropriate, but we have the ability to do the priorities the way we want. But when you have someone from a business or nursing home or whatever, and people call in tears, they don't have what they need, and they've been told to get it from us. And it's very difficult when you don't have it to give to them. We tell people no 4 or 5 times a day, and it's very difficult. But we did, in this last push, we were able to glean enough for our Warren County employees. We were able to keep some aside, but that doesn't mean we're not going to have to buy them. We are at some point. And like I said, the sooner we order them, we may not get them for another month. So
yeah, Supervisor Conover was just saying he ordered some and they're not coming for 2 weeks.
Exactly.
All right, I believe Supervisor Sieber had a question also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was more as it relates to Robert's rules surrounding around that motion and the second and ending debate without further discussion. And I can speak to it at the time of resolutions if you prefer before we vote.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Anything else, Mr. Liggett?
Craig, you're muted.
Okay.
And with that said, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have just would ask if Sheriff LaFar has anything to add from the sheriff's office in response here to the COVID-19, if he's able to speak. And I don't see him being able to come on here. Then with that, I guess we'll pass. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Everybody hear me?
Oh, there we go.
Sorry about that.
Without objection, Mr. Chairman, the sheriff.
I'll be brief. As you all know, we're busy at the sheriff's office, but performing well. I'm happy to report that we've had no affected members or inmates in our facility. We've been working very closely with County Administrator, OES, Public Health. The Undersheriff has taken on the task of working directly with Janelle, and we've visited over 1,000 homes so far in assistance of their office. Starting last week, I reached out to Ryan for a little additional help, and probation stepped up. Director Usey has provided some of his staff, and they've been going around the county to raise awareness and visit some of the public locations, and that's been very successful. Communications has been very busy. The number of non-emergency calls relating to non-essential businesses and gatherings is quite excessive, but we're handling those. The calls that come in through our phone lines in the task force, we have an 800 number we could refer people to, but we're really trying to provide the services directly to our own residents, so we're not referring anybody as of yet. We have a plan in place to start handling the calls as of 8 p.m. this evening for the governor's newest order, and we'll monitor it closely this weekend and hopefully stay on top of that as well. We have no trends or spikes in any calls of any type. I know I get a lot of those questions about domestic disputes and overdoses, and we're not seeing any trends that are anything different than we have under normal circumstances. Outside of that, we're just taking it one day at a time. And in the interest of time, I'm available all day. If anyone has specific questions for your townships or your constituents, please give me a shout.
Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Liggett?
Thank you. That's all I have to report. Thank you, Sheriff LaFar. Thank you, Chairman Thomas.
Thank you. Supervisor Diamond?
No reports, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor McDivitt's not here, I don't believe. Right. Supervisor Bruno, or Bramer, I'm sorry. Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you, Chairman. So my report consists of some various things. Our committee did not meet last month. There wasn't anything urgent on the agenda, so we didn't want to have a meeting via Zoom. But I do want to report that on March 26th, I had a Third Ward Community Forum with my counterpart from the city, Councilwoman Palmer, and we had Sarah Frankenfeld there virtually to talk about the census, which was really helpful. And I hope that we can keep pushing that word out to all of the county residents. Thank you, Chairman, for mentioning that in your report. Then on April 2nd, we did have a meeting with Ulster County officials regarding their county composting program. It was really informative, and it seems like there are some possibilities for us to be able to pursue that on a limited scaled down basis. And I'm really thankful that Kevin Hajos was able to participate, and I will continue working with him and his staff to look at how we can pursue that for the county, some savings there on county composting and taking care of our woody waste. I also later that week raised some questions about the status of RV parks in the state, in the county. So I'm thankful that we were able to look into that, and I look forward to hearing some more guidance from the state about that. I also want to thank Janelle Jones for everything she's been doing. And as I mentioned before, Sarah Frankenfeld has done a ton working on the census, as well as the new county resources page, which includes the map of the Wi-Fi hotspots. And she also put a ton on there about the recreation mapper. And in addition to that, the Safe Trails initiative, she and Joanne Conley, as well as Don Lehman, have been working very hard on that to get the word out about that, to make sure that people are recreating safely throughout the county. And I want to make one more comment. I'm very appreciative of the county attorney sending out the information about the decision that came from the third department. I appreciate her update and the analysis. And I know her office worked very hard on that appeal. It was sort of a win-lose situation, which is disappointing in the one regard that we do have to pay more money for the land that was related to the extension that we are now no longer doing. And you know, it just highlights the need for us to really take a step back when we're making those very big decisions and make sure that we have all of the information in front of us that we need, and that we're making good science and policy-based decisions going forward, so that we don't have these problems compounding and coming back to haunt the county later. I think that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing to report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Human Services did not meet this past month. I do receive a regular communication that Mr. Moore also receives from DSS Commissioner Hanchett every week. And I've tried to forward that to each member of the the Human Services Committee. If there are other board members who are interested in that, they can contact me or Board of Supervisors, and we'll get that out to you. I also receive regular communication with Veteran Services initiatives that they have going on. And I've also been working with Sarah Frankenfeld, Mr. Lehman, and others on getting information on about staff program, food pantries in operation throughout the county. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in my announcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met on April 2nd. It was a short meeting. We have very few resolutions. We have resolution number 150, resolution 158, which is authorizing the waiver of the 5% penalty on the late payment of property taxes, and 159, authorizing an agreement with sewer equipment for preventive maintenance. I don't know if Mr. Swan is here, if he has anything he wants to say. Okay, maybe he has something he'd like to talk to us about at this point.
Yes, I am here.
Okay, good.
Good morning, everybody. Just a couple quick things. Sales tax is still up for the first 2 weeks in March, which is a good sign. Occupancy tax collections are almost non-existent. On a positive note, we're OTB contributions, I think, are going to be way up compared to what they've been in the past. I guess people will gamble on whatever they can find to gamble on since the casinos are all closed. But I do wish to ask for your support for Resolution 158, which gives me the authority to waive the 5% penalty on current taxes that are late from now until 30 days after we are allowed to open up to the public. Any questions about that I can answer? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. That's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr.
Chair. A question for sorry, Supervisor Simpson. I just wanted to ask a question of the treasurer before we move on.
There is a question, Mike.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if you were just asking for questions on the resolution about 158, which I do support. Thank you, Treasurer Swan, for bringing that forward. I wanted to know where we stand with the sales tax revenue projections and how you are thinking we are going to be doing as far as our county budget for the rest of this year. Where are we with projecting that? I heard Congresswoman Stefanik say we counties are in a dire financial situation. How does it look for us, especially thinking that our summer tourism economy is probably not going to bring in as much money as usual, even if we do come out of the unpause, if the unpause happens soon enough for our summer season to start happening. What do you think?
Well, we're obviously going to be down on sales tax. I just don't know how much. The car dealerships have opened up and they're starting to sell some cars. However, gas prices are dropping. I think I'll be able to answer that question better in about 2 weeks when we see what's happened because the figures that we're getting so far have not been reflective of when things were shut down. So I need a couple of weeks just to see how the impact has been before we're going to be able to project. On the positive side, because we have such a large fund balance, this year is going to be, I think we'll be able to weather whatever the storm is this year. I think we'll be fine with that. We have enough reserves that we can handle it. I'm more concerned about what's going to happen in 2021. That's my bigger concern, because if things don't turn around near the middle or end of this year, there's going to be some hard decisions, not only for the county, but for all the towns too, to try to come up with a way to stay under the cap and not raise taxes going forward.
Do you think that, I guess I don't know what to say. I guess we need a couple more months. I mean, it still seems like we're going to be down is it millions in sales tax? I mean,
Yeah, we're going to be down millions. One of the things that I have seen is the internet sales have skyrocketed. So I'm not sure how much that's going to offset all the other losses. But yeah, we're going to be down. My initial thought is with everything, we're probably going to be down maybe $8 to $10 million by the end of the year. But I'll have a better handle on that in about 3 or 4 weeks as to where that's going to be.
And just one more question, Chairman, sorry. Where are we with our general fund? 20, are we 20?
We're a little over 20 million in our unencumbered fund balance.
Thank you, Treasurer Swan.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Beatty, do you have a question for the treasurer?
Yeah, I do. Mike, you still, yeah, there you are.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Well, you know, obviously gasoline tax is a portion of this total sales tax picture. And correct me if I'm wrong, we've never been really able to determine how much of that total sales tax dollar can come from the gasoline sales tax, gasoline tax. Is that correct?
It's about 2%, 2 to 3% of our total sales tax accumulation. That's the best estimate I have.
Okay, so we do have a little idea. I didn't realize that. Okay, so so we have 2 or 3% of our total tax dollar being attributed to the obviously gasoline tax, and obviously that's going to go right in the right down the tubes because no one's driving. Number one, and the fact that the tax, the cost of a gallon of gasoline is much lower. So okay, I was just trying to get a little hand on that. Thanks, Mike.
Just to give you a kind of an idea, retail sales and restaurants make up almost 40% of our sales tax collection. Those two items. So the restaurants are closed and a lot of the retail is closed. But if you go over to Home Depot or Lowe's, it's an anthill. There's people there constantly. So it's going to be a hard one to figure out.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, back to Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Personnel and Administration did meet April 2nd, and we've got 2 resolutions. I'll highlight number 157. It is the one where we delegated authority to make time-sensitive decisions in a COVID-19 related emergency situation. If you remember, there was, we had quite a bit of discussion and we settled on $150,000. And one edit that happened, once this was sent out was that we added, after undertaking a documented attempt to contact each member of the board via call, email, and text to reflect the actual discussion in committee. So I would urge everyone's support for that. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Supervisor Hogan.
Oh. Chairman, I have a question on personnel.
Question about what?
My question is if Matt can give us an update on the number of personnel that we have working from home versus the people who we have who cannot work and are at home. They can't work due to technological reasons or whatever.
I don't have that breakdown, but maybe Administrator Moore would be more in tune on the correct numbers.
I don't have the statistics put together where I can say this is the number. We could do that. It just it hasn't been something that's been on the top of the priority list.
We do have that number. We just said we did have to look into it to get you the actual number.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yes, Mr. Conover, what's your question?
Just a point of order, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we could consume this meeting all day with questions relating to the treasurer and the departments and whatever. And I would really encourage all the supervisors, if they have questions like that, to pick up the phone and call the departments, call the administrator, call the treasurer, and I'm sure he would be happy to provide that. Or if they're looking for a report to be provided at a committee meeting or a board meeting, that they can also make that request. Thank you.
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank all of the county employees, every single one. They've been so helpful to all of us through this, and really every single one of you are rock stars as far as I'm concerned. So thank you. I really appreciate all the help that personally you've been giving me, but also for all of us. Cornell Cooperative Extension Board did not meet this month, but that does not mean they haven't been busy. Interesting, and what I consider an upside to this situation is there's been a real resurgence in interest in self-sufficiency and sustainable living. So CCE has really stepped up their efforts in informing people on raising chickens, backyard gardening, nutritious recipes, you name it. They've been working hard to meet this interesting new demand. They are also holding their annual plant sale again this year. It'll be done online, and I'll send you all a link so you can place your orders that way. Right now, game of logging is up in the air, whether it's going to be held, but we'll let you know. As you know, that's a very popular program. One last thing I want to point out is I've been in touch with Warren Hamilton Community Action. They have been steady, not yet slammed with demand, but we know it's coming. Their food pantry is a staple to a lot of people in the area. And I just want everybody to keep them in mind as we move forward. They receive very little funding from us right now, but I think we need to think about our funding for organizations like that are really holding up the most vulnerable in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson.
Thank you, Chairman. OCTAX did not have a formal meeting this month, but I have to tell you, I've had innumerable conversations with everybody about occupancy tax and the events that are going on and what happens if this happens or that happens. And it's gone on quite a while, as well as with the tourism department. We have set a meeting for a week from Monday for an occupancy tax meeting, and it's to discuss American. So you're all invited. This is a very important event for Warren County. And as you know, Americaid is right at the cusp of whether or not we'll be able to congregate in more than people, then they'll have their California. Well, most of them are from California. And they also try to set these things up so as they come across the United States, they go from event to event and make it more acceptable financially as well as organizing. So it's been very difficult. He's been in touch with everybody, including New Hampshire, about their event. So we will be discussing that in detail a week from Monday. I think it's 11 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. And that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Molino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, tourism has not met, but we're pretty busy here. Some of the things I'm going to say were already mentioned by some of the supervisors, but continuing our presence on social media, which is very important because a lot of people are home and they are listening and watching TV and looking at social media. The department's always been assisting the county level.
Having a hard time hearing.
Can't hear me? I'm sorry. Is that good? To help the residents and local businesses, the department also is working with the planning department on the website. We're working with Don Lehman and ARCC. They worked on compiling a list for restaurants. We're also working with Don Lehman to create a campaign to increase Facebook on our page of the county. I think it's got something like 6,000 followers right now. That's the last I heard. They were working with Ms. Bramer on the trail initiative, putting together a list of videos and for people. We've been sending out not videos, but email type of things, texts of calm things about Warren County. We're still here, and we're just trying to be ready for when people are ready to start coming back. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor, let's see, Supervisor Stroud. No report? No, he's no. I think you're muted, John.
Muted.
He keeps muting himself.
All right. Well, I guess I did just the opposite. No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no report, no committee report for this month. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be as brief as I can. Economic Development, Higher Ed, Planning, and Workforce. I need to find a way to shorten that title, but we met on the 24th. It was a long meeting. We tried to inform all the supervisors as well as the public of what the various actions that were being taken in support of the SBA loans, the PPE loans. We had Mike Biddle, Ed Bartholomew, and another host of individuals to come in. We're going to do that again on the 21st. There were no resolutions, but I would like to briefly warn the supervisors that the meeting on the 21st is the last one of the day. It starts at 11:30. It will be a long one, and we're going to do the same process to try to inform everyone about the various activities that are happening. There are essentially 10 items on that agenda. I think we might add another one or two. I'm going to try to keep it as concise as I can. One thing I do want to mention, there was a question about our employees that are working from home, that are not working from home. I want to tell you a story. You may have seen the issue or the activity that was put together by Sarah Frankenfeld. This is a coronavirus hub for Warren County. It assembles all sorts of information related to the business community, the health community, and our residents. And Supervisor Bramer mentioned a lot of the components that are in there. Sarah and I were talking, and basically what she did was come up with this idea herself. And it's that ingenuity that we look for from people, at least that I look for people, to be able to create something to make a difference in our community and help us communicate to our public. So I'd like to commend her, as well as offer that any other employee that has some ideas that can help with our economic recovery, I think that's wide open for me, and I will support any idea, whether it's a good one or a bad one. Let's talk about it. Along the lines of the Economic Recovery Task Force, we did have our first meeting this week. I'll talk about, I'm sorry, is there a question?
Yeah.
No.
I'm sorry. There was a first meeting with the Economic Recovery Task Force. It was a small meeting. We're going to be meeting weekly. There's nothing necessarily for us to communicate at this time, but there is one thing that I would like to state. Everyone is looking to try to figure out how the economy opens as fast as we can. We in Warren County can't necessarily control that. It's going to be by the state and the federal governments to control when we open. But Warren County residents can absolutely influence when it happens. If we're diligent about our social distancing, if we're diligent about keeping the spread of the virus down, we'll stand a chance to be able to convince the governor that we're ready to open. If this gets out of control, we'll have a much more difficult time doing it. Influence, and please do everything you can to follow the guidelines that the county has set forth, the state and the federal government. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I will yield back.
Thank you. Supervisor McGowan.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. I was a little nervous coming on. No. I hope this finds everybody well. It looks good to see everybody's smiling faces, and that we're all surviving this and working hard. I want to reach out to all the employees that are working in the building and the people that are working at home and trying to get as much done at really at a skeleton crew that we're running. And really a big thank you for Brian and Amy for going out there. I'm sorry that that your numbers have leaked out there, and the phone calls will never stop. But I have to say, welcome to politics, because it's amazing what happens when these crises come down. People want answers, and they want them now. And my phone never stops either, and you're trying to do the right thing. But to move along quickly, support services did not have a meeting, so I have nothing more to contribute on that one, and I just wish everybody to stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. The next item is the report by the county administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we typically do in these reports, I'd like to acknowledge some employee anniversaries. Celebrating 20 years with the county, we have Allison McClanahan from Public Records, John Miller from DPW, and Ronald Dixon from Real Property Tax. And then with 25 years, we have Frank Morehouse from Buildings. And I just would like to personally thank Frank for everything that he's done during the coronavirus response. That involves the cleaners. The cleaning staff have been fantastic. The work that he's done in helping us set up the testing site has been really good. We're up to 128 of those tests. About 45% of the tests that are being done are for Warren County residents. Major game changer in our ability to keep up with this virus with getting that testing site established. So thank you to Frank for that, as well as the mail. We, for a number of weeks, had the mail in a new outdoor makeshift mail facility, which Frank created. We've moved it now to the loading dock now that we have a testing site on campus. But Frank has just been tremendous, and Frank has 25 years now with the county. The new executive order, it's already been spoken about, but it was posted this morning on the state website. I would just like to read the section regarding masks. Any person utilizing public or private transportation carriers or other for-hire vehicles who is over age 2 and able to medically tolerate a face covering shall wear a mask or face covering over the nose and mouth during any such trip. Any person who is operating such public or private transport shall likewise wear a face covering or mask which covers the nose and mouth where there are other passengers in such vehicle. This directive shall take effect in the same manner as Executive Order 202.17 at 8 p.m. on Friday, April 17th. That essentially just extends the mask order for the general public into public transportation. I think you've probably all seen already the text for the mask piece that applies to the general public. So about how difficult they are to come by. As a county, we're trying to encourage people to make masks at home. The CDC has great guidance on how to do that. If you have employees or family members or friends that have the capability to do that, the county is willing to accept those donations and do what we can to distribute masks to those in need who don't otherwise have access to them. All you got to do is Google CDC cloth face coverings, and it'll pop up the link with the instructions on how to make those. And also the piece that I've been most worried about with the masks is using the masks properly. And there's education that needs to be done on that. I've sent some of that around. I'd be happy to send it again if you need it. A mask, if you don't use it the right way, can increase your chance of getting sick because people develop a false sense of security when they wear a mask. And also to the extent that you're out in public, in the grocery store or whatever, and there are particles in the air that carry the coronavirus, those particles are going to end up on your mask. So you don't want to touch the outside of the mask. I've seen people pull the mask down and wear it around their chin when it gets itchy or something. Worst thing you can do. So we do have those guidance documents, and we'd be happy to circulate those. We put them on social media, etc. I think I've said enough there. I don't want to do a really long report like I normally would. I'm reporting in every day on the coronavirus activities. But I do want to say thank you to the supervisors, in terms of the town supervisors, as well as Mayor Hall and Mayor Blaze. I talk to you all a couple of times a week, if not a couple times a day with some of you. You're all doing an excellent job in your respective towns at responding to this crisis. The at-large supervisors, just because you don't have a workforce, it doesn't mean that you haven't also been stellar. You all have. Jack Diamond, who's very good with budgets, continues to talk with me about budgetary matters. We've got a lot of work to do to make sure that our county comes out right on this. Thank you, Jack. Supervisor McDevitt, to chair the health committee right now is, to say the least, not an easy task, but Peter has held meetings and will continue to do so to get information out as to our public health response. Supervisor Bramer, Claudia, you did an excellent job with the Safe Trail Initiative. You're a perfect spokesperson for it. And trails are open. Whether we like it or not, people are going to use trails, and there's a way to do it safely. And that campaign, I think, was very important to both our residents and those from out of town who might be up here. So thank you for your work. A unique perspective that you've had with respect to nursing homes. Those kind of conversations really help me think through issues and how we deal with issues. So thank you, sir, for your perspective on that. Supervisor Driscoll, you've been fantastic to the DSS department, to the countryside, to veteran services. Having you lead this committee, somebody with your heart, it has been the perfect match for what those departments are going through right now and the support that they need. And also your connections into the not-for-profit world are invaluable. Mike Wild, Supervisor Wild, you're heading up the economic recovery efforts and you're doing a hell of a job. We appreciate that work. And as we expand that group, it's going to lead not just to excellent outcomes, I think, with respect to our economic recovery, but excellent outcomes going forward about how we can break down some of the silos that do exist in economic development and work more countywide as one team to advance this county and make it all we know that it can be. Thank you, Mike, for your work on that. Brad McGowan, we've talked about a number of issues. Most recently, we talked about Wood Park. Thank you so much for keeping me up to speed on that and for the part that you played with your colleagues in approaching that situation. Supervisor Seaver, Rachel is a fountain of ideas. It's hard sometimes to keep up with all the ideas she has, but she's done a tremendous job, I would say, for the most part, in having an impact on how we relate to the public. There's a couple of proclamations on the agenda today that wouldn't be there if not for Rachel. Rachel played an excellent role in getting us to launch that hub, the coronavirus hub, which Sarah Frankenfeld did such a great job, but Rachel provided a lot of the inspiration, certainly for me to take a second look at that and make sure that that was something we did. The Q&A that we had at the end of the last board meeting, we're going to do our best to do the same today if there are members of the public that want to participate. And Rachel very much had a stamp on that. So thank you, Rachel, for all of your work in making us more accessible to the public. And Supervisor Beatty, when I'm down and when I need some cheering up, there's nobody better for a good joke than Doug, and I appreciate that. You've lifted my spirits when I really needed it. And also, Doug is a very, very good debater. And when we have items that we don't see eye to eye on, ventilators is one issue. I joke with Doug, I'm a pretty good attorney in terms of doing a cross-exam, but he's a damn good witness. And having those conversations help me wrap my mind better around these issues that are very, very difficult. So thank you, Doug, for that. I'm proud of everything that our departments are doing, everything that our employees are doing, and I'm proud of everything that all of you as supervisors are doing. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much. I see a hand waving. Whose hand is that?
Mhm.
Do you have something you want to report about it?
Chairman Thomas, I have a question.
Okay. Party administrator?
Yes. Is it okay to proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I do feel that the questions that I am asking are questions that are in the forefront of the public's mind, and they deserve to have these answers, and there's no reason they can't have them in a public forum like this. And I really appreciate, Chairman Thomas, that we are having a regular board meeting. I know our neighbors to the south are having some problems with that sort of thing, and I really appreciate your continuing to keep the county operations going forward. County Administrator, I just had a question about the testing because we didn't have a report from Supervisor McDevitt on the public health side. Can you give us and I want to say thank you for everything you're doing as far as the updates every day. It's very helpful knowing that information, and now it's getting out through Don Lehman and our regular listserv updates that people are able to sign up for, which is great. And I want to thank Janelle and everyone who put together the testing site. That is an amazing resource for the entire region, and you did a great job there getting that off the ground. I'm wondering if you can give the public an update on how long we anticipate that being able to stay open with respect to the number of testing kits that we still have in our stockpile, or do we think, I shouldn't say stockpile, in our resources, and do we see any more coming into us from the state or wherever to keep that going? Because it's really important, as has already been mentioned, about being able to reopen our economy. Thank you.
That's an excellent question. We started off with a daily capacity of 48, and that capacity was dictated both by testing kits as well as workflow. We have a process where the traffic flows into the site, and we have staff that have to be on the ground handling it. So during the first 3 days of testing, we actually finally got up to that 48 tests, and we realized that from a workflow perspective that we could do more. So that 48 was based on 12 tests per hour for 4 hours of the duration that this testing site operates each day. We were able to add the 6 additional tests per hour. So we took the 12 and we increased it by 50%. So that means that we can get up to 72 from a workflow perspective. That doesn't always mean that the demand is there as providers continue to get used to using this as a resource for their patients. But if the demand is there for 72 tests a day, we can process that workflow. And from a testing kit perspective, I have had conversations with the governor's office about our ability to get more testing kits into this area if the demand supports it. And they've reacted very positively to that. Obviously, we're one region in an entire state, and the allocation of testing kits needs to be sensitive to the needs of all regions. But to the extent that we do have the ability to get more testing kits into this area, I'm 100% convinced that the governor's office is going to support us on that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No report from the county attorney. Okay. Next is reading of communications.
Through April 2nd, 2020, from the Appointment and Training Administration, and we have a letter from Pam Vogel designating those to serve as acting deputy county clerk in the absence for inability.
To be louder, please.
We have a report from the Employment and Training Administration, the record of activities for January through April, and a letter from Pam Vogel designating who is to serve for the as acting deputy county clerk.
Okay, next is reading of resolutions.
Resolution numbers 150 through 159 were distributed to the members of the Board of Supervisors and posted to the Warren County website on April 9th. Resolution number 157 was amended after mailing and was redistributed to the board on April 13th. A motion is needed to approve the amendment to Resolution 157 as provided.
Would someone care to make that motion? Moved by Supervisor Hogan, seconded by Supervisor Dickinson. Discussion. If I could have everyone raise their hands, please. And opposed? Okay, the amendment is carried.
There is one proposed resolution in your packet. That's the one that's proposed by Supervisor Merlino. That's amending Resolution 222 of 2019, which authorizes event fee rates for the Charles R. Wood Park for 2019 to provide for a 50% reduction in event fee rates for the remainder of 2020. This was mailed out to you yesterday. If the board is interested in approving this, you will need a motion to waive the rules and then a motion to bring it to the floor.
Okay, yes.
Motion to waive.
Motion to waive the rules by Supervisor Driscoll, seconded by Supervisor Bramer. Again, raise your hands if you're in favor of waiving the rules. And opposed? Okay, that carries. Would someone, Gene, you want to introduce the resolution?
Yeah, I'm very pleased to say that I talked to every supervisor on this resolution. And 18 supervisors.
You gotta,
I can't hear him.
excuse me, Gene, you gotta speak closer and clear.
All right. Thank you all for waiving the rules. And I'm happy to say that I did speak to every supervisor on our board. 18 of them were home when I called. And it just amazed me that everybody was staying home and doing their work there. But I appreciate it. I tried to explain it. I think everybody understands what we're doing here. It was kind of pressed last week by some of the business people and some of the people doing events at the Farwood Park. So I'm putting forth this resolution that we do reduce the rate just for the rest of this year at 50%. That was an easy number to come to. The mayor and I and Mr. Hagos discussed it because we still need some money to clean up, run the bathrooms, do some of the stuff in the environmental park that comes out of this revenue. So I appreciate your support on that. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Supervisor Dickinson.
Gene, does that 50% apply to the two parking areas, the one adjacent to it on Westbrook and the what used to be the old village parking area? Are they going to be reduced to 50%?
Oh, that's something that's got to come out later on. It wasn't on this proposal. They just started calling this week on it, and I said we'd speak to the board and see if they wanted to add that to the proposal.
It's one of the issues that Americade has, Gene, so we're going to need to discuss that in some detail.
All right, yeah, I just got the email from them last night on it, and I told them you and I will get together and we'll see if we can bring something else up on it.
Okay, thank you.
We do need a second to
I'll second that.
Second by Supervisor Dickinson. Yes, Supervisor Sieber.
Gene, it's really tough to hear you. I just wondered if Don maybe could put the resolution on the YouTube live comments so that the public can hear what the proposal is, since we aren't able to take a look at it. But I do want to say, Gene, I support this, but more importantly, whether I support it or not, is the fact that the lengths that you took to make sure you notified all of us and to talk with us and explain on Monday what was going on. I really appreciate that. And, you know, I think it makes a big difference on when we're bringing things up off the floor and having that discussion. So thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion, Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for Gene. Gene, when we spoke, I asked you what the typical revenue is for the year and what we expect to lose. Maybe it's more coming from our treasurer, but I'd like to just get a sense. I do support where we're going, but I'd like to get a sense of the loss of revenue for making this type of move.
Yes, the mayor talked to me yesterday on it. It's roughly $1,000 a year. So everything goes the way it is, we'll probably lose 14, 15% of that. If we have for that, 14 or 15,000.
Thank you.
Further discussion on bringing the resolution to the floor. Yes, Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, I'm really appreciative of Jean getting a hold of everybody by phone so we knew that this was coming. And along Supervisor Dickinson's comments, I think we should also consider allocating some kind of money for advertising new dates for all of our events if that happens. I'm not saying anything specific, but I think some of our events are going to have their dates changed. So from a regional perspective for Lake George area, can we look at helping out those events by doing some sort of promotional thing about new dates when it's safe to open back up to the public for events? Thank you.
Supervisor Molina.
Thank you, Supervisor. Yeah, the tourism department is preparing plenty of advertising as soon as this stuff breaks. We will help the business people that are coming to the park and our whole general area with pretty much a great turnout to let us know. We can't do anything now. Nothing's open. Restaurants are not open. Hotels are not open. Can't advertise something we can't sell. But as soon as this gets a break, I know our tourism department is preparing for it right now, and we'll be right on it the first minute we can do it.
Supervisor Dickinson, please.
I'm good. Thank you.
Good. Okay. All righty. I'll call the question on bringing, I think it's resolution 161 to the floor. Raise your hands, please. And if you're opposed, okay, that carries.
Thank you, Chairman.
The resolution waiving the rules of the board is now 161, and the resolution proposed by Mr. Molino is now 160. I'm sorry, waiving the rules is 160. This new resolution is 161.
Okay, we'll move on to discussion and public comment. Is there? Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss resolution 150, please.
150. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the public's benefit, and I know we're seeing more and more people watch and observe these meetings, I'd like to explain a little bit more in detail about the actual resolution. The resolution in front of us today is a finance meeting, roll call vote making supplemental appropriations. But for those people that don't have the backup documents, which I have here, it's actually a transfer of monies from the sheriff's law enforcement salaries to the sheriff's law enforcement automotive gas and oil for $90,000. What that means to me is that $90,000 in this particular personnel line item is that we not transfer the money and we don't spend money at this point in time. But what makes this a little bit more complicated was the amendment that was added to this resolution. We amended that resolution for the acquisition of new masks, more masks, which are in demand in our area. There's no question about that. But when we advance our agenda to resolution 157, we will be authorizing the county administrator to make those purchases today, to make those orders today. So it really wasn't necessary to amend this resolution to include the transfer of $90,000 from law enforcement's personal services to gas and oil. It doesn't make any sense to include the purchase of more masks. What this does, what this amendment does, and I don't agree with it at all. As a matter of fact, I think it puts my colleagues in a difficult position because now they're forced to make a decision on voting. If you're going to vote against the transfer of $90,000, which I'm going to vote against, how can I justify not purchasing masks? So it's a double-edged sword here by amending this resolution. I don't agree with it.
I don't think it's an act of transparency, and I think it puts my colleagues in a difficult position. If they don't want to vote for moving to 90,000, then they're going to look bad that they don't want to buy masks. So it doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion on resolution 150. Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The way we voted on had a second and did not have additional discussion or further debate. And, you know, according to Robert's rules, at least what I'm reading in front of me, is that debate is absolutely critical to talk about perhaps being able to withdraw an amendment, or part of that, as Supervisor Diamond is bringing up, is it really does, I guess, in essence, having done that secondly. And I think it's important to note that we do have rules of the board, but we also go by Robert's rules. And specifically it states that cutting off debates infringes on the rights of members to speak. Therefore, no one member of the group can force an immediate end to debate without the right to do so or calling the previous question. And given Supervisor Conover's the rules along with points of order, I do think maybe it's worth taking another look at how that process was done. But at this time, I would like to ask our county administrator, once again, if there's a way that we can look at getting some of those official Robert rules in print in front of us. I think a lot of us are struggling, or at least I know I am, to follow the debate and discussion, and at the same time go back, verify that I'm correct on the Robert's rules. I'm not saying I am, just based on what I'm reading. But, you know, when we go ahead and do an amendment to a resolution, technically, we should have asked for further debate. My hand was raised electronically. I know that's difficult, Mr. Chairman, to see sometimes, but you have an opportunity to speak up 2 times, up to 10 minutes at a time, unless, of course, there is a motion made to limit that debate, and that would be done on a 2/3 vote. So again, I would just ask that perhaps that's something that could be revisited, but maybe Mary is the correct person, or whomever the parliamentarian, as it relates to Robert's rules. But I would like to see more emphasis on not being, and I'm not accusing you by any means, Mr. Chairman, of being selective with the Robert rules enforcement. I'm just saying that, you know, at that point in time, there was a need for further discussion, and we went ahead and voted on it. And I think specifically it being an amendment is something that has a different set of rules attached to them as the initial motion that was made. Thank you.
Well, I think with that, we did have a discussion on the amendment, and considerable discussion, and I believe that you yourself, Mr. Seaver, made comments.
Right. Mr. Chairman, that debate usually comes after a motion and a second, and then the debate takes place. In this case, the motion was made, debate happened, a second was done, and then we moved on to do the vote. And, you know, that was my only point of order. Again, it's not to be argumentative or anything of the sort. I'm sure it wasn't intentional, Mr. Chairman. I'm just simply asking that we take a look back at that resolution for Supervisor Diamond, Supervisor Beatty, Supervisor Bramer, and all those other supervisors that had concerns about that process. Thank you.
Further debate on resolution 150. Yes, Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I also had a problem with amending this particular resolution to add the mask money to the existing 90,000 transfer. I completely support us being able to go forward and buy the masks, and assuming resolution 157 is approved, which I'm sure it will allow the group of supervisors to authorize the purchase of the masks. You know, after hearing from the treasurer that we're going to lose millions of dollars in revenue, I'm very concerned about spending money on something that is not essential at this time, like the masks are. And this particular transfer of 90,000 talks about moving the money out of the salary code. And I'm very concerned that if we take that money out of the salary code, that we will not have money available to continue paying our employees throughout the rest of 2020. And I would like to make sure that we protect our employees. So I'm going to vote no on 150, although I support the purchase of the masks via other means. Thank you.
Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did say yes to this when the vote did come around, and I have to agree with some of the opposition here. Is that, you know, adding it on, I would have really liked to see this as a separate resolution, so it would probably be easier for reimbursement down the line if we're able to get that, as Brian stated. So I believe because we did, my wife and I the other day, my wife was looking for masks, and you're absolutely right. They're very hard to get, and they're becoming harder in your selections and what's safe and what's not safe. I think we need to move on this, but and we did in committee discuss, you know, giving the on 157. But I guess we couldn't do the 157 because we, the board, haven't voted on that yet. So I just wanted to state that, you know, I will be following through, yes, so we could follow with the mask. I was just hoping that we could have had a process where we could have added on a quick resolution at the end. So thank you.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't aware that on Resolution 150, there was a problem with what the committee sent forward to the full board about the sheriff's transfer of funds from one of their codes to another one of their codes in their overall budget. That could have been brought up during the discussion, and I do feel we had a good discussion at the time of amending 150. If people feel that the sheriff's budget transfer is a problem, perhaps there should be a motion to move that off of Resolution 150 altogether. I would also, perhaps we need to, the whole board might need to have a little bit more information about that moving of money within the sheriff's code. That did go through committee. It was well presented and was accepted by committee just a couple of weeks ago. So if there's a problem with that, let's deal with it.
Okay, Supervisor Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Leggett kind of addressed what I was going to ask for, is a better explanation in terms of why there are issues with the sheriff trying to manage his budget. And I think the sheriff is also one of our essential services besides the government as a whole. We need to support the sheriff. So I guess I don't understand what the issue is with supporting the sheriff and managing his budget. Thank you.
Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any way I can propose a resolution that we separate the funding for the mask from the current resolution for the transfer of money in the sheriff's budget? I think the bottom line is many want separation, and it makes total sense, as I said earlier, to have the two separated and not tied together. So I'd like to make a motion that we have a resolution that separates the two. Can we do that, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, we'll have to waive the rules again.
Okay, so I propose that we waive the rules. So
Okay.
I need a second.
Need a second, that's right. Seconded by Supervisor Diamond. Yeah, we've discussion on waiving the rules. We've covered this ground once today. Okay, everyone raise their hand that are in favor of waiving the rules. Okay, and opposed? We're gonna have to have a roll call vote because I can't.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure I understand what's being done here. Is the motion that's being considered to delete the $90,000 from this resolution? Is that what we're entertaining?
No, this is a motion to waive the rules to find out what is going to be proposed.
So we don't know just yet.
No, we don't.
But couldn't, just if you allow me to continue with my point of order. So people that have issues with this, could they not just amend this resolution with a proposal to delete the 90,000? Just, in other words, couldn't they amend this resolution by deleting the 90,000 transfer?
I'm sure they can.
And doesn't that seem a more expedient way to proceed than to waive our rules, to consider something that we don't even know what we're considering? I would just put that out there to the proponents. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Oh. Frank.
Okay, so hold up. Stop waving at me. We don't need to waive the rules. We need a motion to amend Resolution 150 if that's what the board desires to do. Dennis?
I don't understand any of this. For one thing, I have complete faith in the sheriff's office. He can figure out whether he needs that money in one side of his budget or the other, and he's done that, and he's come to us and asked us to do it. So now we're second guessing him? Not me. I'm not second guessing him. It's his department. Okay. He's done a great job so far. So I don't understand any of that, and I don't understand the problem with the mask. Just get it out there and get it done with. Stop talking about it all the time.
Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm not questioning. I was there for, for the sheriff's request, and I'm just asking to separate the sheriff's money with the mask money. That's what I thought the process was. I'm not questioning the transfer of the sheriff's money. Sheriff LaFar does a great job, and I have full faith in him. So,
okay, well, in order to do that, someone's going to have to make a motion to either take the law enforcement transfer off or the contingent off. So we need a motion to do that if that's what the board desires. So
just one follow-up too. How can we get? See, I don't want to hold up the mass. So. Can we add another resolution on? As
we will do that after.
As long as we can add them on and we can move forward with this, and Brian can get on to ordering them.
Okay, so I'm going to end discussion unless somebody makes a motion here pretty quick.
Frank, I just have one point to make. One of the things
I don't want to hear points. I either want to hear a motion or we're moving on.
Well, I don't think that's fair, Frank.
This is the second time we've debated this. Somebody needs to make a motion.
I agree with you. I'm arguing the same argument, but I have a point to make here. You can't take one of these and not the other. The sheriff's ordering the cars is time sensitive. They got a deadline. They got to order these cars now, or they're going to be out of the picture.
Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion.
Supervisor Gary.
Our point was, all done it in the committee gets paid,
Can't hear.
This was all done in committee. The sheriff explained himself why he wanted to amend the budget to purchase these cars. committee agreed, maybe not everybody, it wasn't unanimous, but we all agreed to allow.
Still can't hear him. Still can't hear him. Please start over.
I forgot what I said. No, this was all done in committee, the finance committee, this was all done in committee, the sheriff explained it pretty well, they respected his ask. One of the reasons why he wanted to do this is because the purchase of cars that he has to buy now, they've done away with most of the sedans. Some of these are SUVs that he's purchasing rather than sedans. He felt it was the best thing to do with his budget, and the committee approved it. End of conversation.
Okay. Yes, I believe Mr. Wild had his hand up. Supervisor Wild.
Thank you. I'll create a motion. We're basically demonstrating to the public how dysfunctional government could be. So I'd like to make a motion that we separate these in two separate resolutions and we move forward with a vote on each of them. I will support both, but let's just move forward. And maybe someone will second that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, amendment proposed.
I'll third it.
Amendment proposed by Supervisor Wild, seconded by Supervisor Bramer, to remove the masks from Resolution 150. Did I state that correctly?
Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, I wanted two separate resolutions.
We have to do one thing at a time. We can't do.
I'm sorry. Guys, you did it correctly.
Right now, we're amending Resolution 150, removing the $25,000 for the masks. Any discussion about that? Supervisor Bramer.
That's Rachel.
I think you mean Sieber.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So from the comments on the chat that Administrator Moore just highlighted, that the funds just are not allocated for the purchase of the masks, does this resolution that we're talking about that gives Ryan the ability to authorize and make those decisions up to 150,000 also appropriate that money once this is passed? It just seems to me that all of that can be done under that other resolution, but I know we can't amend a resolution twice.
Yes, we can.
We can.
Yeah, we can be here all day and amend it 3 or 4 times if we'd like.
I don't know why I read Robert's rules. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we're on our way.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Supervisor Liggett.
Thank you. I would ask for Resolution 150 that people that do not want to have the sheriff's law enforcement budget item there at 150. Send it back to committee, table it, whatever, but deal directly with sheriff's law enforcement salary. Do it an up or down.
Okay. I chose the masks. I can choose the 90,000 for the law enforcement, if that's agreeable with Supervisor Wild and Supervisor Bramer.
So we'd be taking
The law enforcement transfer off.
Off of 150. Okay.
You're okay with that, Supervisor Wild? He's okay with that?
Yep.
So the current motion then is to amend Resolution 150, moved by Supervisor Wild, seconded by Supervisor Bramer, to remove the $90,000 from the sheriff's law enforcement, the transfer. And I dare ask, is there any discussion?
I just want to ask a question. So
Yes.
if we take the 90 off, that means we're not acting on his $90,000 at all, even though we approved it in committee?
At this point, yes. If it passes, yes.
And both of them are transfers. I don't understand what the big deal is. One is transferring the sheriff's department. The other one we're transferring on the contingency with the mask. So they're transfers. I guess I don't get what the big deal is about, but it's just me. So thank you.
You're welcome. Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to mention that Supervisor Leggett came up with a pretty reasonable compromise It's been stated that this was vented in the finance committee, but it's never been to public safety. And that's the committee that Mr. Wickett chairs. And that's a committee that I'm a member of. So I'd like to, even if we're going to move the 90,000, let's bring it to the committee Monday, discuss it. And then if it's agreeable through the committee process, then we send it back to the full board. That probably makes the best sense.
Okay. Supervisor Conover.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be voting against the deletion of the car from this resolution. I think our sheriff knows full well the needs of his department and the needs of the community, and I'll be supporting the sheriff by voting against this deletion resolution. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the proposed amendment to Resolution 150? Supervisor Leggett, I'll let you speak.
Thank you for indulging me. I could get the sheriff on the phone here to discuss the timely nature of this. If this gets delayed a week, it may miss an opportunity for what we need. We need to be able to make decisions well. Both Supervisor Beatty and Supervisor Bramer brought up an issue about the Board of Supervisors being able to make better decisions, and especially in a timely manner. This is one of them, and information is important. With Mr. Chairman, I'll leave it to your discretion if you'd like the sheriff to chime in to describe to all the supervisors present what the situation with this budget transfer is. I would ask that he come on and tell us.
Without any objection, I will allow that, yes.
Yep. Sheriff, are you able to come online?
I am here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
So going through the budget process last year, I learned that we have a reserve for our vehicles. We put together a proposal for the vehicles that we need for our staff, and the reserve was significantly deficient. I've worked with Chairman Thomas. I worked with several supervisors. Supervisor Garrity gave me some great advice for working with the budget. We were still a little short. We don't have an excess in salaries. We projected accurately for our salaries and benefits for our employees. But under the new procedures where we're sending candidates to the academy, we've had vacancies for several months. That has created a surplus. I understand budget austerity. The county administrator has asked us to start taking a look. The undersheriff and I are doing that. We're confident that we will have locations in our budget where we can return money to the county. But in this instance, like Supervisor Leggett mentioned, these are vehicles we need for our staff. Our police officers need to have sound, reliable vehicles to get to the calls in your towns and city. And again, if this budget transfer doesn't go through, we're likely not going to be able to purchase some of the vehicles we need for our officers.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone need any further discussion about Resolution 150?
I have a question for the sheriff, Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Certainly. Supervisor Conover?
Sheriff, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Sheriff, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear
Sheriff,
me?
I'm just curious to this purchase of this vehicle, $90,000. Did you have considerable discourse with supervisors regarding this prior to this meeting?
None at all. No.
Was there any, did supervisors contact you relative to this purchase? No, did I hear that correctly? Say that again.
No, I've had no discourse.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. So you have not had any discussion with any supervisor relative to they're having any issues with this. Thank you.
No, sir.
Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you. Like I stated, I was there, and it was a good question there, Supervisor Conover. I don't have a problem with the cars, and actually, to be honest, right now is probably the time to do it because the deals are out there. But if anybody's out looking, but really, we didn't have a problem with his amendment, I don't believe, and I'd like to maybe show a sign of hands. Who's against the cars and who is against just adding on the mask? I think what I'm understanding and all I've been asking, and I believe is just separating the sheriff money move and separate the mask. That's it. I didn't see an issue with the cars. I thought it was the mask. And if I'm wrong or if I'm misinterpreting this, please let me know.
That's all well and fine, but you have to do one or the other, one at a time. And currently, we're amending it or removing the sheriff's $90,000, and that's what we're talking about. Period.
Well, I guess the sheriff is up there.
I'm not going to listen to the back and forth. That is the amendment. Is there anybody who wants to speak to that particular amendment? All right, I'm going to ask the clerk to conduct a roll call vote on that amendment to Resolution 150 to remove the $90,000 for the sheriff's transfer from Resolution 150. And that's the question.
Mr. Chairman, at the risk of you saying, like, coming over out of the screen to me, this is not to waive the rules then. This is
to amend Resolution 150. If you want to take the 90,000 off, you say yes. Okay. If you want to leave it there, you say no.
I just I heard you say once we were going to visit that, do one thing at a time, and then to Edna say, yes, that's how it stands right now. So as long as we're going to put that resolution back on somewhere else, then I'm going to vote yes.
That's not up to me.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I vote yes to amend the resolution. Thank you.
Mr. Beatty? Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
No.
Can't hear her.
Can't hear.
Can't hear Amanda.
Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Conover?
No.
Mr. Leggett?
No.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
No.
Mrs. Frazier? No. Mr. Simpson?
Can't hear him.
Mr. Simpson?
You're muted.
Take the mute off.
I just took the mute off. No, sorry.
Ms. Hogan?
No.
Mr. Dickinson?
No, and I'm not sorry.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Stroud?
No.
Mr. Weil?
It was my motion and I vote no also.
Mr. McGowan?
No.
Karen Thomas?
No.
The motion fails. It only received a vote of 265 in favor.
Okay, discussion on other resolutions. Yes, Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be very quick. Resolution 156, I've heard from a few members of the public, their concern about amending the tables of organization and Warren County salary and compensation plan. I'm 100% behind it. I want to explain or inform those individuals that have some concerns about those about this resolution, that these were decisions that were discussed, vetted long before the governor or the county's proclamation about the situation that we're in. These positions were discussed, many of them last year or earlier this year. So again, I just wanted to clarify that if they weren't in response to any type of emergency, these were things that have been discussed and are necessary in order to conduct business on our different departments. Thank you.
Any other discussion on resolutions? Okay. Yes, Supervisor Dickinson.
No. No, I had nothing. I'm
You're
sorry.
just waving to me?
That's what, flies. Black flies, yeah. I wasn't waving to you. You told me not to wave anymore.
Any roll call votes for any of the resolutions? Okay, public comment. I believe Don has either comment or question about resolutions.
Yes, we do have a comment from Frank Dietrich, Warren County Lodging Association, that on 161, which is the Charleswood Park resolution, that the Warren County Lodging Association and many businesses in the tourism community appreciate the consideration from the county with regard to the fees for the use of Charleswood Festival Commons. As you know, the contribution of tourism to the community.
Hang on, I can't hear.
You can't hear? I'm speaking in the microphone, right? I mean, can you hear now? No?
Got to be close.
Loud. Comment from Frank Dietrich, Warren County Lodging Association, as to Resolution 161, that big businesses in the tourism community, we appreciate the consideration from the county with regard to the fees for the use of Charleswood Festival Commons. As you know, the contribution of tourism to the community in jobs and sales tax is significant. Every action to help protect the tourism economy will be critical this year. Members of the Lodging Association wanted me to say thank you.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, not. Okay. Hey, I'll have the vote on resolutions.
Okay, resolution 150. This is as amended to include a $25,000 transfer. Supervisor Seaver?
I was a yes on 150 from the start, even with the amendment. So I guess even with all these changes, I'm still a yes.
Mr. Beatty?
I'm going to vote yes only because it's just not, it should have been separated, but I've got no other recourse other than to vote yes.
Ms. Shepler? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
I just want to point out that at our last meeting, Resolution 135, we moved $299,600 to the Sheriff's Automotive Equipment Reserve at this point in time. I'm going to have to vote no on this movement of money simply because we don't know if the economic times are coming, and I'd rather not spend that $90,000 at this point in time today. So my answer is no.
Ms. Bramer?
I agree with Supervisor Diamond. I'm a no.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier? Yes. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 156, amending the table of organization. Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Frazier? Yes. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
No.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 158, authorizing waiver of 5% penalty on late payment of property taxes. Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty? Mr. Beatty?
Yes, sorry.
Ms. Shepler? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh. Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier? Yes. Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
And get collected on the rest.
And a collective on the remaining resolutions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, we have privilege of the floor and public comment. I believe probably we have some.
Just one through Facebook, a comment from Alex Thomas of Queensbury asked, what can be done to stop out-of-state visitors from coming here to Warren County now?
Nothing.
I think I can answer that. Nothing. The governor is taking away our ability to issue executive orders without the Department of Health's approval. So at that point, it's basically ends up being a request by our county. We don't have the power or the authority to prevent anyone from coming.
We should definitely strongly recommend they contact the county health department. They need to abide by the quarantine rules, and they should bring their own food supplies up when they come up to stay here. They shouldn't be shopping and going around town if they're not cleared from having the virus. It's just those practical things. But no, you can't force them to do any of it. I'd like to.
Any other? That's it? Wow. Announcements. Yes, Supervisor Kepler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The town is doing a countywide garage sale on May 17th of 2020. I'm sorry, is that any better?
That's better.
The town of Thurman normally holds its Thurman Townwide Garage Sale on May 16th and 17th. It is going to be canceled this year due to the COVID-19 virus, and we wanted to get that out to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to share two things with you. The first is a friend just texted me that 2 years ago today, the tanker cars were brought into North Creek. And remember when that was our biggest problem?
Yeah.
Second, and this is, just bear with me, a very short story. I recently had to travel, and my car obviously has New York plates. We were going to see a family member, and it was important that we go to see the family member. We crossed state lines. We had all of the food for our entire excursion in the car with us. We had no plans to do anything outside of the home. During this trip, we were flipped off several times. People honked at us, made lots of rude gestures, angry faces. It was a pretty interesting drive, to say the least. But I'm only sharing that with you all so that you understand.
Yeah, I'm at a board meeting.
We don't know what the motivation is for why somebody's
announcements are.
We don't know, if they have New Jersey plates, they might be here for a completely valid reason. They might be an essential worker. They might be healthcare relief. We need to watch our rhetoric when it comes to this. And, just sharing that, because it was pretty unsettling to have this experience. And I kind of saw it from the other side that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good points. Supervisor Bramer, I believe. Yes, Supervisor Bramer.
I did. Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, Supervisor Hogan, for sharing that little bit of your perspective from the other side. I wasn't going to ask this in public, but since Supervisor Hogan did mention the railroad, there was an article in the Times-Union recently about Saratoga North Creek having been brought into the bankruptcy proceeding, and that the bankruptcy trustee is searching for an operator for the line. I'm very concerned about that, and knowing that this board has already passed a resolution about the abandonment, I would like us to, I would like to see the board actually move forward with that so that we are clear. We are not looking for an operator. We've already gone down that road or that railroad, and that is not something that we are supporting at this time.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Yes, Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Supervisor Hogan said, a lot of the food pantries are really struggling. They're seeing an increase in individuals and families accessing them. You've probably seen on television some of the major cities and the lines a half mile long waiting to get in. Locally, that's not the case, but per capita, we are seeing an increase. I'm working with Don Lehman and also Sarah Frankenfeld to get that information out, pinpointing where the food pantries are, how to contact them, and their days and hours of operation. I also have a press release that's going out to newspapers. I have batches of handouts that I would ask supervisors. It'll be mailed to them this coming week to try to share those with businesses that are open in your area. The target audience is certainly individuals and families who have lost jobs or had hours greatly reduced. Their income coming into their households is a lot less than it has been in the past. These are people who have never applied for SNAP benefits. They've never accessed the food pantry. We want to make sure that experience for them goes as painlessly and that they get the real information about those services. They're intended to help supplement their budgets. Again, 40% of the individuals who benefit from SNAP benefits, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as food stamps, are 16 years of age and younger. About 25 to 30% are senior citizens. So again, almost 2/3 of the population who benefit from SNAP benefits are vulnerable populations, if you will. So I have some of the handouts for those supervisors who are here. Also, if you're running food pantries out of your town centers, I've got plenty of tote bags that you can bring back to help there. And then also very quickly, I had a chance to visit the Broad Street Commons project, the workforce development project, 73 units of affordable workforce housing in Glens Falls on Broad Street in the 5th Ward yesterday. And there was a nice article in Wednesday's Post-Star. In the coming months, when we maybe begin to talk about affordable housing, certainly that's a matter that's very important throughout the county. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Supervisor Merlino?
Just want to say on a good side, I got a donation sent to the town hall for our senior center. We decided we're going to start sending out baskets of fruit starting next week to all the people that we deliver to. Was $1,000. So we're purchasing 40 baskets, and they will be delivered to every senior that we deliver Meals on Wheels to. So I'm very happy for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice. Supervisor Dickinson.
I just point out, Frank, I've been on the Warren County Board for 12 years. This is the longest meeting with the shortest agenda I ever attended. I'd make a motion, we adjourn.
I second that.
Motion made to, moved and seconded by Supervisor Garrity to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Good. Well.
The following program is underwritten by the generous support of Associates of Glens Falls and Loomis & Lipan Insurance. Since 1852, they have been assisting both businesses and individuals across the country secure the most comprehensive insurance products available. Associates of Glens Falls and Loomis & Lipan are one of New York's largest independently owned insurance agencies. Public affairs programming on Look TV is underwritten by the generous support of Pinnell's Restaurant, classic Italian-American food since 1922, and Stored Tech, technology solutions for computers, networks, and phone. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.
1922, Babe Ruth debuts with the Yankees. WGY signs on air. Exterminator wins the Saratoga Cup, and Pinnell's Restaurant opens its doors for the very first time. For 5 generations, Pinnell's has been preparing delicious Italian food, served in a comfortable, home-like setting where everyone is welcome. 90 years of authentic Italian recipes, 90 years of the freshest ingredients, and 90 years of the finest classic Italian dishes, all made daily by hand. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga dining tradition since 1922.
Most cybersecurity firms deal only with prevention, the systems that block hackers and viruses. Stored Tech knows the root cause is actually good people doing bad things. So we offer a security training program which includes certifying all participants to show they understand the basics.
Technology solutions for computers, networks, and phones. Stored Tech, your technology, our passion.